Morning, guys. Happy Friday. I hope everyone is doing amazing. I hope everyone's had an amazing week. Also, welcome to my YouTube and welcome back to another daily market outlook. I've just basically broke my phone. But welcome back to a new daily market outlook for today. I hope everyone is keeping well. Before we get into the charts, just remember that the content on this channel, inside my Discord, inside my course, anything that I do is for educational and informational purposes only. I am not a financial advisor and nothing shared in my videos should be considered financial, investment, or trading advice. Understand that trading and investing involves risk, and you should always conduct your own research before making any financial decisions. Any past performances discussed does not guarantee future results. You are responsible for your own financial decisions. Okay, so let's have a look at what is going on. We've had some movement yesterday, so I'm excited for this one. Going into today, we have Canadian dollar red folder news, employment change, unemployment rate at 230. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on if you are obviously trading a Canadian dollar pair. But other than that, we have nothing. Let me just refresh in case anything's changed yet. Nothing to discuss in regards to, of course, the US dollar. So let's have a look at what's going on. So what has happened since we last came on here yesterday? So we're still inside of this daily demand area. We've had a beautiful reaction from that daily supply area, which we have been discussing this week. Two thoughts straight away are I'll explain why we are in a 4 hour demand area inside this demand. So are we going to now see this? That's one scenario. Or are we going to see a reaction? Obviously, we could talk about this on lower time frames to carry on down potentially into this demand area. And then when we get to this demand area, we can decide if market's going to obviously carry on shorting and following the internal structure, or are we going to carry on with the daily structure and we're going to get that shift to go bullish again. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Again, we do have a lot of imbalance below this as well, and above this daily demand. So we have imbalance to target. Going into the four, you guys should be able to pretty much see why we're looking obviously at this area. We have these two candles here, these last two sell candles before this bullish move up, and they're both unmitigated. Yes, you can go off this, but just for this purpose, I like the fact that it's two candles rather than one. And as you can see, the market has reacted quite smoothly in there. We've had a 4 hour body closure like this, wicked below into that 4 hour demand area and obviously slowed down a lot. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens now going into today. Now, most importantly, what I want you to understand is even though we're in this 4 hour demand, I want you to understand the structure internally. You can see that the structure internally is still obviously bearish. You can see that market structure is bearish still inside of the daily structure. So what does that mean? Well, what that basically means is we need to keep an eye on market still giving us shorts. Now, first area that I can keep my eye on is this 4 hour demand supply area. This 4 hour supply area, we have imbalance below that. That could be where market from a dollar perspective gives us our next move down. Of course, if we jump down to the 1 hour, and we can identify that area within this 1 hour structure. You can see that it's been clear. We had obviously this bullishness, market give us that change of trend, and then we've been creating, that downwards trend since. So are we going to get this area to be the next area to go and create that new lower low? So that is definitely what I'm keeping an eye on. Again, yes, if you want to, you can try to refine this to as much as possible. That would be the 1 hour supply area where the imbalance started, or you can just simply go off the 4 hour zone and wait for the reaction inside of there. That's totally up to you. But as you guys can clearly see, that is the structure that we are currently in at this moment in time. So if market potentially does give us a bullish reaction, and it's pretty clear that we are obviously then bullish, we can then look for the longs. But as of right now, I'm following this internal structure at this moment in time. So hopefully that makes clear sense to everyone. Let's have a look at what's going on with Euro USD. So Euro USD, as I've discussed, obviously it's been consolidating inside of here, but as we've discussed, we have this daily supply area above, a lot of imbalance below this daily supply as well, and a lot of liquidity targets that you can see like this high, we got this high, we got this high, we now have created this high. So we have got a lot of liquidity targets that we can come and go higher to. But at this moment in time, we're still in this daily supply area. You can see market obviously move down. Then we had this pullback and then we moved down again. So that is a valid supply. Is it my favorite? As I said yesterday, no, it's not. This would be my more favorable one, but it's still a valid zone. Going into the four, you can pretty much see that not much has changed since yesterday. We obviously discussed the fact that I wanted to personally on Wednesday have this market come in and obviously carry on. We haven't even got a dip or anything yesterday. It's just been slowly, moving up. And then obviously draw my eye to here. What could market possibly be reacting from to go short? Because if we look at the dollar, you can obviously see that we've got a reaction from this 4 hour demand. Now I look at Euro USD and I can't see nothing. I'm not going to lie and say from a 4 hour perspective, I can see something clear here because everything seems pretty corrective and pretty clear. Pretty no imbalances, not real any zones that have not been mitigated. So that's when I'll start to look at the 1 hour to see if we do have any clear zones on the one. So having a look to the left, no again, because if you look at this scenario here, this scenario, for instance, already got mitigated here and moved away. So for me personally, I don't like any shorting ideas at this moment in time for your USD. But looking at the scenario from a perspective, if you look at the dollar, you can see that when we get to this forward supply, where could this be vice versa for the euro? And then looking at the 1 hour, we are now coming into this area of demand. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens from this area of 1 hour demand. Again, if the dollar is, being a bit slower to get to that supply, market could obviously come into the lower parts of this and potentially even down here into that 1 hour demand. It just depends where the dollar is most importantly, because we could slow down a lot in here in order for the dollar to get to the supply. And then if that happens, then we can obviously make a decision to see if the dollar's going to obviously carry on from that supply and potentially just carrying on from this demand. So hopefully that is pretty clear to you guys. Now going into the Great British Pound US dollar, let's have a look again. Still in that daily supply. We are still in that daily supply. We have been in there now since Monday, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days of us being in that daily supply, which is again a positive sign because when the market does slow down, if you look, consistently when we reach a supply area before the market gives us a reaction, you can see we do slow down a hell of a lot. And I can obviously show you this multiple times. We slow down a hell of a lot. So, even here, if we look at this and we point this out, this supply, 1 second, you can see again, we stall and we slow down a lot before making that move down. So the positive signs are still there from a daily. And if we carry on, then of course, amazing. Let's have a look at what's going on from the lower time frame. So let's have a look at the 4. Now, instantly what I can see from a 4 hour is we punched above these highs here. So we have punched above all of these highs. So we've taken liquidity. Remember what I always teach you guys. Markets are looking to rebalance itself and also seek liquidity. That's the two main priorities for the obviously the dollar. So and for the chart, sorry, we have taken these liquidity, and that's where market is giving us this reaction. Let me just quickly close this door, guys. 1 second. Because I know anytime now my dogs are going to start barking like crazy because my missus is going to be coming back. So ideally, looking at what we're doing is if the dollar carries on bullish from the 4 hour demand, is this a valid reason why we could carry on shorting? Well, yes, of course, because we're in that daily supply and we've also taken liquidity. That is two, confluences, two confirmations. Now, we haven't reached this 4 hour demand, as I talked about the other day. Market obviously pulled back and then carried on again. So I'm just going to quickly look at the one to see what is going on. Because in order for me personally to participate, you can see that we had a reaction here. We had this bullish engulfing candle. Market pulled back, tapped into this 1 hour demand. Oh, 1 hour demand. Market then went bullish, came back, didn't tap into this demand here. Don't think. Nope, just missed. But came into the imbalance, took liquidity, and then it's carried on. So at this moment in time, what I'm interested in personally is just seeing what happens from where we are currently at. I do like the look of that 2 hour candle just to refine our entry. Again, if you want, you can obviously go off the start of that imbalance. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens from this demand area. Again, is this where market's going to start to give us the bullish reaction and carry on with GBP USD? That is ideally what I'm looking for. If it aligns, as I always say, with the dollar inside of this supply area. Now, of course, as I've discussed with the other pairs, if market, carries on shorting, then of course you can make a decision to look for the shorts if it aligns with the dollar. Again, if the dollar breaks above this high, then of course, if we look for the dollar bulls, we'll be looking for GU, EU, and other major pair shorts. NZUSD, let's see what this is doing. Seems like she's just gone on a bit of a tangent and just gone bullish. So looking at the daily time frame, we can see that market is obviously pulled back firstly above the 50%. I think I discussed with you guys on a daily market outlook this week that well, if you don't know anyway, I like it to come into above the 50% of a range. So that is our lower high and lower low. When market retraces, if I can't see a clear demand or supply area with imbalance, I will obviously look most at Fibonacci and see a 50% retracement. Because when we're in that 50% retracement, we're in the premium zone. When we're in the premium zone, that's when we want to look to short. So ideally, what we can do is we're above the 50%. Yes, we can obviously mark out the fact that we have all this consolidation part here, which is obviously already been mitigated, but we can still mark that out. So because we're in that premium area, market could obviously just carry on shorting from here if it wants to. It can just carry on shorting from here. But of course, we will need to wait for confirmation and also just playing into understanding that we have reacted from this demand area. So because we've reacted from this demand area, as you can see that the internal is bullish. So it wouldn't even surprise me is if, let's say NU carries on bullish, this will be our next daily demand area. So let's say that we get, for instance, market shorting, we could come into this demand and then get this to be the next bull run. So just be aware of that, of course. Just be aware of that. Would that align with this? Well, if market carries on shorting, then obviously NU carries on bullish, but we would need to see it come into this area. But let's have a look at the lower time frames and see what's going on. Okay, so first thing I notice is, of course, everything's pretty corrective here. If I look at this scenario, we can see that we have, this area of supply, which we haven't come into yet. And we also have imbalance below there. But market has decided to come back into this area of supply, which is already mitigated by this. But that's where market is currently reacted. So, if we go to a lower time frame, we might be able to see that there's a 1 hour or a 15-minute supply or imbalance above this area. So as you can see, we have imbalance here. So that's where market, if you just zoom in, you guys should be able to see that. We had imbalance here. So that's where market has decided, or why market has decided to punch above. So if you look at this scenario again, ooh, and then go to the one, you can see that's why market has given us this reaction so far. Now, let me just quickly change this. So one thing I'm keeping my eye on is the fact that I'm gonna obviously see what happens when market does reach this 4 hour demand area, because if you look at the internal, you guys can probably see as well that the internal is obviously bullish. Um, we had a reaction there yesterday, but you can see the internal is obviously bullish. So in order for us to participate in the shorts long term of this, we would need to see this this low broke. And obviously, then if you get that low broke, that's when you can then, obviously potentially look for the shorts to carry on down. But at this moment in time, we have this 4 hour demand area, and that's exactly what I'd be looking for if it obviously aligns with the US dollar to give us the reaction away from here. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys watching. Okay, let's have a look at AUD USD. Should give us any excitement or not? So similar scenario to NU. Sorry, let me just get rid of this because that will annoy me when it's on there. Similar scenario where we haven't tapped into this daily supply, but we are having a reaction from that daily demand. So ideally, if we do carry on shorting, I would want to see the rest of this imbalance filled. And this daily supply area mitigated. That's what I would ideally, like to see. Now, give me 1 second, guys. Well, yeah, as I just said, I would like to see that happen. But we have had a reaction from this daily demand area, and the internal has been bullish. Now, if we look at the four and we just follow the trend and what's going on, you can see inside of that demand we have this 1 hour, which is obviously very, very tight. That's where market has reacted from. And just looking at this scenario right now, obviously we mentioned yesterday we was bullish, and then market started to shift a little bit. And then going into obviously Wednesday, we started to get that bulls back in. Me being honest with you, AUD USD is not my favorite to obviously look at. It's probably my least favorite at this moment in time. So I'm not even going to discuss anything at this moment in time. We'll go down to the one. Let's have a look quickly. The only thing that I can talk about is if the dollar, like I said, gets this supply. I would then potentially just be looking to see if market gives a reaction from where it's at right now, which would be this 1 hour demand area consolidation, bullish reaction, see if market can obviously react from there. But yeah, that is what I'd be keeping my eye on for AUD USD, seeing some sort of shift and then looking to potentially participate if it aligns, like I just said, with the US dollar. And then obviously, if that's the case, where can we target? Well, as we mentioned, we have this daily supply and a 4 hour supply up here. So that could be a target where you obviously look for reactions from, and obviously take your take profit up to there. Going into the next, which is USD CAD, let's see what's happening. So we're inside that daily supply still. We've been in there for God knows if 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 days in this daily supply. So, as I mentioned to you guys, I'm either waiting for a break, I said yesterday, to carry on shorting, or vice versa. Let's have a look at what's going on the lower time frames. So, from a four, we've had some sort of break, I guess, some sort of market move down. It's still in that range of just consolidation. You can see market has still been going sideways, even though it has started to short. So yeah, ideally for me, I'm going to focus on what the dollar. If the dollar goes bullish, then can I see anything for USD CAD? No, not necessarily. I can't. Um, Unless we potentially go into the one and see if it's reacted from a 1 hour supply down here, which it could have, potentially. But for me, I'm not too sure. Now, one thing that we can obviously notice that is the internal here has been bearish. You know, we mark out these supply areas. You can see that obviously this is from a 4. Yeah, this supply. So if you guys are unsure why I'm marking this out, this is obviously just the way that I teach people to trade. If you look at the internal, we have a break. Market comes back into what? The last buy candle that causes sell down. Again, has a reaction. Where does market come back into? I didn't mark it out for some reason. This last buy candle that caused that movement down. You can see this last buy up before this moving down. That's where market comes back into that candle to mitigate. Same again, comes down. Where's market come back into? This last buy up candle and then rinse and repeat. So looking at the 1 hour, what can I currently see? Um, well, I can currently see that we are in that supply area here. You can see where market is consolidated. Let me just mark this out 1 second, guys. We are inside of that 1 hour supply, sorry. Does that align with the dollar? Well, the dollar's pushing into this. So it'll be interesting to see if this goes higher or not, just because this has reached that supply before the dollar has. But if it stalls and waits for the dollar to get into that supply, then this could be the area that we obviously then look for market to, carry on shorting from. And then again, if that happens, where can we potentially look to target? Well, we have a lot of liquidity lows here. We have a lot of imbalance. We have this 4 hour and daily demand area as well. So it could be a nice area to carry on shorting from. So let's see. Let's see what happens going into the rest of today. Okay, USD CHF daily time frame. As you guys know, reacted from this daily demand. Internal here give us a shift. This big institutional candle told us a little bit about the market. And we have this daily supply, that's where market reacted from, and has continued to do so. I obviously mentioned it's the same as the dollar. If we're going to carry on from here, then of course we can expect that. But if market wants to retrace lower, why would it want to retrace lower? Well, we have a lot of imbalance to fill, and we have this daily demand candle, and then that could be where the market gives us that shift to carry on to go and create a new higher high. So that is my main thought. We have reacted beautifully from this daily supply. Now, if we look at the 4, this is the 4 hour and 1 hour supply inside of that daily, and it's been pretty corrective. It's been pretty clean internally to we obviously had internal bulls to bears. So ideally that is just looking, that is obviously what we can keep an eye on for today. Now one thing I'm just noticing is we have this, oh, what the hell is that? 1 second. We have this area of supply on the 4, which is where market currently is. If I go down to the 1, can we refine that? Yep, we can refine that to where the imbalance has started. So this is pretty much similar to the dollar, as you can see. So you can see the 1 hour range is here. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens when we get into this. By the way, look at this from yesterday that I talked about. Just missed my entry from this 1 hour supply, which we're gutting. But yeah, this is what I'm going to keep an eye on. So set your alerts. That's what I'm going to do when I get off this video, just to keep an eye on these areas. So pretty simple. As you guys can probably already tell, when we get to this area, wait and see what reaction we have. And if we get that reaction, we can obviously then look to continue short from this 1 hour supply. Beautiful, beautiful trade, as you guys see from yesterday. Let's have a look at the daily first. You can see reacted from this daily demand, we've been extremely bullish, but then we discussed that this for daily supply. We've had a beautiful reaction as well. Market has stalled a little bit here. And this is our next daily demand area. You can see that imbalance above there as well. So it'll be interesting to see now, are we going to carry this bulls on? So what I mean by that is if the dollar obviously goes bullish, then that would make sense. But we could carry on just seeing this go and create a new higher high. Because that's our next daily demand. If we break, for instance, this low here from a daily, I think we're in to take all of this down. We could obviously target a hell of a lot, and it could be a long-term swing on sells. But looking now at the second, looking now at the 4 hour, beautiful reaction from this 4 hour supply, beautiful reaction from this 1 hour supply as well yesterday. Where is market currently at? Well, oh, I've just done there. So